Hello and welcome back to the Horse Race Politics podcast. We are back. For those of you who are new here, welcome. My name is Louis Bromfield. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at Swansea University's Department of Politics, Philosophy and International Relations, but I only do politics because I'm not smart enough to do all three. And really, wow, in the last 9 months, so much has changed. New leaders, new global power dynamics, new threats, global and domestic financial and political precarity, scandals at the top and heart of government, and so much more. But despite all of this ebbing and flowing, all of this change, one thing remains constant, and that is the crushing mediocrity of my co-host, Professor Matthew Wall. How are you, buddy?
I'm regressing towards the mean at an alarming rate.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's kind of comforting when you're often wrong.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm due a win.
Yeah, I feel like, if you're constantly wrong and you're regressing to the mean, that means that you are now getting better, right? You really should get something right at some point in your life.
Spiritually, I think that's where I'm at right now.
That's not the worst place to be, let's be real. Like, there's too much going on in the world right now. I feel like if you're not maybe necessarily not predicting and you're just kind of vibing, you're just chilling in this zone of like, whatever.
I'm kind of preparing to be predicting.
Okay.
So that's kind of quite nice. I'm actually reading a lot. Reading about Wales a lot. And learning a lot about the country.
Have you learned anything interesting that you can share off the top of your head?
So many things.
Such a politician's answer.
Okay, so
I don't have a favorite Bible verse. There's just too many. I love them all.
Should. I mean, if you're interested in getting into Wales, you should look at the origins of devolution here.
Okay.
And especially the kind of fate of the architect of Welsh devolution, Ron Davies. Is this like a name that means anything to you?
No, I don't really care about Welsh
politics. This is a historical. So I've been to kind of understand the country, I have to read about history.
Yeah.
So this guy was a minister in the Blair government, big Labour, UK Labour heavyweight, father of devolution, nailed on to drive the whole thing forward. And the guy just goes for one walk on Clapham Common, and does some stuff that none of us probably be proud of doing. And the whole course of Welsh history changes from that point.
Right.
So the people of Wales, I think, to understand themselves, have to know what was happening on Clapham Common. So you can ask the guy if you see him.
Yeah.
What was going on? He hasn't really given a great answer yet.
Yeah.
But he got the sack. So and to be fair, in his most historians and stuff regard that, and I think when you look at his legacy, it was a really brilliant politician. People were a lot less chilled out about this stuff in the 90s. Nowadays that'd be just that wouldn't even be a story.
Yeah.
But at that time it was New Labour, and they had a kind of squeaky clean, kind of family friendly image, and that didn't align. And I think if he had have actually admitted what happened, it wasn't that bad actually. But it's one of those things where I hadn't realized the extent to which, I suppose, before I read this book, the turning point that represented in Welsh history. So I don't know, is that interesting? Or
that's a usual Saturday night.
Sex scandals are always good to know about.
Well, yeah, we haven't had a proper sex scandal in British politics for quite some time, have we? I mean, maybe what the.
I mean, have you followed the career of Boris Johnson?
I was about to say, I think maybe the Pincher scandal is probably the most recent.
I mean, I can't believe what you've just said. British politics has been a succession of massive sex scandals. It's just people have stopped caring about it as much. So I mean, look up if you fancy an interesting read, Jennifer R. Curry and Boris Johnson and what was happening there.
Yeah.
That's a juicy enough scandal.
That's a lot, yeah.
But it's just in the context of it's no Stormy Daniels, and even Stormy Daniels, everyone's forgotten about.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there was a whole indictment process, but that apparently seemed to work in Trump's favor. Apparently, becoming an actual criminal at that point is a good thing for your career. Maybe Keir Starmer could take some lessons.
He used the mugshot for fundraising.
Hell yeah. And had shirts that said never surrender.
I don't think it would hurt Keir Starmer at all.
No. The only way is up. Let's be
discovered to be having an affair or something. I think it would give
him with Stormy Daniels as well. I could see that. I could see it.
Are we going to talk about it anything serious, or is this just...
No. This is wish fulfillment, right? This is I think it would actually be cool if Keir Starmer had a good scandal.
Well, as Keir Starmer has yet to meet Stormy Daniels, to my knowledge.
To your knowledge.
Let's talk about what's actually happening.
Yeah, we probably should.
Did you want to tell the good people about horse race politics and what we're doing?
Not particularly. No, of course I do. So yeah, I thought one of the things just to quickly go over, spend 5 minutes on before we get into some other juicy topics is actually like what horse race is. Because it's the name of the podcast, and we kind of alluded to it a lot last season, but these podcasts just end up us just kind of shooting the shit for an hour and not really talking about anything of substance. Horse Race is effectively a website that we're creating. Albeit the guys that we're working with will get very angry if I call it a website, but I'm going to call it a website. So Tony Sanchez, Darius Taylor, if you guys are listening, I'm sorry, it's a website.
So that's the kind of geniuses we're working with are called Focus Games, and they're I mean they bring a lot to the table. So both the kind of gaming element that we'll talk about on the website, but also like they're an amazing kind of team in terms of like getting the data collection and the design and all the kind of coding. So we're working. They're the characters you're referencing.
Melvin, Renee, Taylor, Dalius, Tony Sanchez. What a name! That's a really cool name. We're just like doxing these people's private information. But anyway, they're a great group of people that we work with at Focus Games, and what they're doing is they're helping us take Horse Race, which we kind of mentioned a few times before last season, into its new iteration. And we're kind of turning all of our attention towards the Senate elections next year. So we're hoping that kind of by the end of this year, we'll be rolling out the newest iteration of Horse Race to the public. And just in a single sentence, it's effectively just a political forecasting website. But we've kind of overloaded it with gamification to make it fun and enjoyable. Leaderboards, point scoring. There are social feeds. The podcast is on there everywhere. We just advertise it all over the site so that people are forced to watch it. But yeah, so that's kind of coming down the pipeline. But whenever we talk about horse race politics, obviously horse race has a meaning within campaign context. But in terms of like our USP, what actually makes this podcast unique rather than just the complaints of two white guys, it is actually something more substantial.
And I think that's going to so like with any project like this, you're kind of building the track as the train is kind of rolling onto it.
Yes.
But what we'd like to do as the pod kind of evolves a little bit is we'll have a set of like things that you can predict about the Senate election, but we'll also have kind of smaller like weekly predictions that you can do. And I think the analogy, like when you wrote your PhD that you used was like fantasy football. As a kind of way of following football. And we thought the kind of advantage that forecasting has over a lot of other kind of ways of gaming people into liking politics is there's like the forecasts are specific and the event actually happens or doesn't happen.
Exactly.
And so over time you get like a kind of what's the word, a score that represents how good you are basically at forecasting stuff and how well you engage with that. And the kind of hope is that process of actually trying to be right might make people smarter about politics. But it also offers a way into it.
Exactly. If you keep guessing, eventually you will regress to the mean, to use your term. And I think it's one of those things that when we were kind of starting out with this research, because we are academics, so we do kind of shill our research slightly here. A big gap is that in this kind of forecasting space is that people just throw predictions out into the ether, and then there's no accountability. There's no fact checking were you right or not. Maybe outside of like individual prediction models like your Nate Silver types or Alan Lichtman as we talk about quite a lot, whereas there's almost like a schadenfreude for a lot of people to say that you were wrong and I'm going to enjoy your suffering. So that's effectively kind of what horse race tries to like formalize. Is like, can we actually give everybody who participates a score? Can we rank everybody? Can we make this a competition? But like big picture, that's kind of coming down the line. But as the site progresses and as it gets to release, you'll hear all about that on the podcast. But eventually we'll hopefully be at the point where we are kind of taking time out, have a little segment to kind of see what's the state of the markets, what are people saying, and that will make for a lively discussion.
Can I just say one thing about this? No. So this is the Fox and the Hedgehog, which so there's another scholar, a great scholar called Philip Tetlock, who's
Phil, if you're listening, we want you on the show. Right?
Yeah, you're very welcome to join us. Who's basically led the way intellectually for a lot of our work, which that's how scholarship works, thank God. But one of his, I think so he did a lot of work essentially like retro forecasting. So if somebody said, "Oh, Democrats are going to crush," he'd put that into a forecast, and effectively he found that like the kind of punditry that you get is no better or worse than randomized prediction.
A dart throwing chimpanzee was the term
dart
that he used.
throwing chimpanzee. So that's like the kind of status quo, and he found that people who are really good at forecasting have these intellectual or like psychological traits that make them fox-like, right?
Yes.
So what the kind of fundamental metaphor is that they take as they find from like various sources,
different sources,
and they kind of intelligently process things,
update their predictions. They're not afraid of changing their mind. These kind of things that you would expect make a good forecaster.
Other end of that spectrum. So I think it's Isaiah Berlin talked about foxes and hedgehogs. Is a hedgehog. So the hedgehog's characteristic is it has like one thing that it knows how to do, which for those of you who know about hedgehogs is like roll up into a ball, right? That's its thing.
Yeah. That's like you most days in the office.
Yeah, I'm kind of a hedgehog. That's I've kind of come to realize that about myself.
Prickly.
I'm quite opinionated.
Yeah.
And I tend to see things through a fairly consistent ideological lens, which turns out makes you bad at forecasting.
Yeah, it does.
So you have to kind of try and be more Vox-like if you want to be a better forecaster. But does make you and like I think the biggest characteristic that makes people interesting to watch on TV and why pundits are brought back even when they're wrong all the time. Hedgehogs are good pundits.
Yeah.
So someone who's going to kind of sell you a story every time.
Agreed.
Someone who can frame like I think Jacob Rees-Mogg is an amazing hedgehog. Like I saw this guy frame like the concentration camps in the Boer War as actually like not that bad.
Yeah.
Because Britain did it, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that's a hedgehog.
Yeah.
And so, you know, Nigel Farage, top hedgehog.
He's a hedgehog.
So the people who are bad, I think that's just the kind of insight I had from a lot of that work that Tetlock did, is the people who are bad at forecasting, or actually stupider than the average, are kind of ideally suited to media work.
Exactly. Yeah, because it's not a compelling media appearance if you go on the news as a quote unquote fox and you're like talking about all of the sources of information that you've consulted, the fact that you've changed your mind 6 times in the lead up to this appearance. No, they want someone who comes in with this like, no, the small boats contain criminals and this is what we're going to do. And my worldview is a very racist one, and this is the way that I perceive all of this. And that you can see how that permeates through all of their logic, right? And it's a very clear, consistent message, and that makes for good TV, as horrible as it is, as horrible as that reality is. Whereas if I go on there and I say, well, I've consulted this text, and initially my assumption was that the net effect on, taxation was this, and, and
I estimate
then
that the amount of money that this costs is between 1% and 3% of the money that tax evasion takes up every year.
Yeah,
like that's kind of boring.
That is boring.
We're being invaded by hordes of hostile foreigners. I guess for British people is exciting. For some people,
that sells. You got.
I don't find it that exciting.
No, well, you were one of the people who invaded.
I'm a hedgehog, and an invader.
You are an invader, right? You came over here through the legal channels, as I'm sure Farage would say.
Yeah. So anyway, just for the listener, it's, as the website starts to kind of come online, and be kind of ready to be public facing, we'll be like talking about our forecasts and inviting everyone to join in. So that I think it's just good to give people. It won't just be us just chatting like this forever.
No,
there's a kind of trajectory.
There is a USP to this podcast that's not just us sitting here complaining. As much as we love to do it, don't get me wrong. Like this is like the highlight of the week is just sitting here and just chatting absolute nonsense. But I think that's kind of explains what horse race is all about. So I think we'd like to move into our first proper segment of the show. We never had segments last season.
You cooked this up. There's some high production value.
High production value. We have a. I don't know if my laptop's like blocking the view. I'll hold it down here for now. But we call this Matt's wall of great crack and the sad sack. It's patent pending, trademark. If I see anybody using this, we're gonna like sue you into the ground. But this is effectively every week. Matt Wall will present Matt's Wall. You see what we did there? The creativity knows no bounds on the Horse Race Politics podcast. And as you may have guessed, this is effectively just a morphed version of Heroes and Zeros, right? So, over to you, Matt. Who have you got as this week's great crack?
So a great crack and a great fella is Evan David MS, who sadly passed away.
Rest in peace.
And I think so he was Labour MS for Caerphilly, and everyone, I didn't actually know Evan like personally, but as someone who like lives here and is trying to follow like Welsh politics, he was always someone who would actually like when after he'd finished speaking, you understood better what was going on.
Unlike your lectures,
unlike my lectures, but also unlike a lot of our political leaders. And I've talked to a good few people. So obviously in my job, I talk to a lot of people who cover politics or politicians, and he's kind of one of these people who is universally respected and liked and seen as someone who, and I think it's it's kind of normal and I think appropriate to be quite cynical about the motivations and the nature of politicians. So we've discussed the proclivities of like Boris Johnson. So I think it's useful to kind of know about things like that. It's useful to know if a party donor has personally paid for you to have wallpaper in your apartment, or if another donor type person has like introduced you to the person who goes on to direct the BBC. These are useful things to know. And being Irish, we had a lot of corruption when I was growing up as well. So it's a long way of saying like and just generally, I think I always slightly mistrust people who put themselves forward for leadership positions. Even as someone who does that myself sometimes, right? All of that said, like, it's not an easy job being a politician. I think you have to have a combination of skills that most people struggle to kind of put together. You have to be personable. You have to actually care about other people, or at least be able to kind of simulate that. And you have to be kind of a good politician. You have to be clever and hardworking and like understand what you're actually trying to make laws about. And I think Evan was someone who kind of ticked all those boxes from everything that I've seen. And like, if people like that didn't go into politics, it would be a much worse country that we're living in. So that's my great crack. And obviously my sympathies go to his friends and family as well. But like, I think it's good to celebrate people. And it's often, unfortunately, when people do pass away is when we celebrate them. But it was unexpected and sort of tragic and sudden. But nonetheless, like we must sort of celebrate people like who do the work of politics, like that day in, day out work of like actually connecting up our democracy. They're great crack.
It's a fundamentally it is an insane thing to think about, like what you do demand of your representatives. Like, you're asking them to effectively be experts in more or less every facet of public life. Like, usually, the best candidates can sometimes emerge out of a proficiency of a particular field. They're a well-respected community member, but it's like being a core part of a community does not necessarily translate into being able to, legislate on every aspect of public life.
Did you ever hear like it's like the Burkean approach to being an MP? So it's like Burke, this philosopher, had been like elected as an MP, and he's giving a speech to the people who voted for him, and he was basically saying, "Look, I just, all I owe you is my judgment, and like I'll see you in 5 years." Like, it's great. It's like but most MPs and like John Moorcraft, a PhD student I'm working with, like he's looking at the kind of home style, like the constituency representation. But most politicians have to have a base politically, and simultaneously have to kind of have a power base in London. So that's not easy, and that's if you want to like maybe affect things very, very marginally.
Especially as an outsider, right? Like, this is where it's all like it's not what you know till you know. Coming into that world from the outside, I think wasn't the last general election like one of the largest for the most newbies coming in, which, I mean, that in and of itself represents a colossal shift, right? Like,
well, and again, the previous I'm sorry to say it, like in the UK Parliament had become like quite an unsafe place for women and men. People were predated upon sexually, and it was seen. I mean, it was at scale. So it was good to wash that rabble out, if you ask me.
Yeah, it's a very different type of scandal that we're dealing with the Labour administration right now. You know, it's like, I didn't pay enough tax on my house, and then I mean, you've got like
this is
the donation freebie
it does bring me back to
scandal.
the Blair years. It's more about just people just flat out giving money to politicians. Like Keir Starmer's glasses broke my heart, I have to say.
I mean, you got a load of free Arsenal tickets, and the fact that you're willingly going to Arsenal games, I think, should make you unfit for office regardless. But that's just my opinion as a Chelsea fan. We'll reserve judgment on that one for later. But that's our great Craic. Who this week is Matt Wall's sad sack?
Yeah, and I'm not going to personalize the sad sack.
Yes, that is a rule.
Not this week.
You are allowed to pick anybody, individual or collective or system.
Yes,
for either category, you are allowed.
So I've picked an institution, which is a new institution. And I'll give you some background before I get into it. So, like, when I was a PhD student
300 years ago,
it was, black and white.
You smoke and then all the text came up on screen.
I had a job working in the Irish, the Houses of the Oireachtas, like the Irish Parliament.
Nice.
And I was working on a committee that was researching like how the Irish electoral system was working out and how to change it and improve it. And so like that was a big part of like 2 years of my life. So I know a lot about electoral systems. You'll just have to accept. I'm not going to like mansplain electoral systems on the pod, but you do. What I'm saying is basically
you did
true.
get to a professor level.
Yeah,
with elections being kind of one of the things that you can kind of talk about.
But my PhD was on electoral systems specifically.
That's
right?
True.
Wales, where we live and what we're talking about, in about I think 2016, there was kind of there was a realization that like the 60 members of the Senate were like struggling to fulfill the functions of a parliament. That is a kind of a very, very low number of members to like produce and scrutinize like legislation, to represent people, to from which to draw the government and the opposition and all the committees. Right. So to make a parliament work, what I felt was there was a very fair argument that like the Senate needed to have more members of the Senate. And as part of that kind of project, they were also looking at the electoral system, by which we vote here in Wales. And previously you'd have like a candidate who'd vote. You'd vote in the constituency and you'd vote for a party list. And the kind of cleverness of the old system was like the list kind of adjusted the disproportionality that comes with the constituency by constituency. So say Plaid had finished like third in a load of constituencies. When it came to the list allocation, that kind of boosted them up, if that makes sense. So that was quite
you're effectively electing in two tiers though, right?
Yeah. You're electing two types of members of the Senate, I suppose. But so that's like the same system they have in Germany, for example, right? It's like a mixed member electoral system. But we decided like, well, as we're going to grow the membership, kind of expand the size, so it's going to be 96 now members. We need to look at the electoral system. And they commissioned like a report that was I found like a really excellent document that I use in teaching sometimes. Which recommended, surprisingly, an electoral system different from the one that they adopted. Indeed, it recommended 3 electoral systems that were different from the one they adopted.
One of them being just no electoral system.
And they had a table of systems that they'd considered and rejected.
Nice.
For various reasons. And one of the systems on that table, the closed list electoral system, is now our electoral system in Wales. So why is this annoying? So in order to make like votes and seats kind of proportional, most systems rely on like a kind of a list that you vote for, a party list, okay, and to decide who the member is that the person, the human being, is elected is, the ordering on the list is what matters. Does that make sense?
Yep.
But this is rather troubling compared to like the previous Welsh system, or indeed the kind of UK level system, where you have like a member of the parliament from your area that you can name and see and give out to or praise, right? And if they help you, maybe over time they have an incentive to do that because you and your family might vote for them. Does that make sense? So among proportional systems, there are systems that don't rely on these closed lists, right? Indeed, the mixed member proportional is such a system in a way. But like my own native Irish electoral system was like the top rated one. Proportional representation by single transferable vote. And I think it's like the electoral system that lets people express the most preference about who gets elected, and have the most chance of their vote sort of counting, and yet nonetheless produces more or less proportional outcome.
Can you just explain STV?
Yeah. So when you vote in Ireland, you get to like rank order as many candidates as you want to rank order.
Literally writing 1, 2, 3 next to them.
So some people like me fill it all the way down. Some people put 1, 2, 3. And if you vote for someone as your first preference and they're kind of eliminated in the count, your second preference kind of translates back into the count.
So whoever's getting like right at the bottom of the first count, they're eliminated. And then the second
and then their second preferences are kind of given
redistributed.
And then that's another round, and then that kind of iterates until all the people are elected. So I think it's a wonderful system. It does take a while to count it up, right? Because there's like all these rounds.
Oh, boo-hoo.
And literally like one ballot going missing can like change things.
This goes back to the point about foxes and hedgehogs, right? Of like something like first past the post, where you just
that's a hedgehog system.
You're just done in one night because people need that result at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, right? Like if it takes a few days, I'm sorry, I don't care if it's a better system.
To digress for a moment, I think when I was watching the Brexit vote, some part of me, when I saw them doing the like relay race in Sunderland, I knew Brexit was going to win. I'm like, that's the most Brexit thing I've ever seen.
People like getting a box out of a car in Sunderland and running for their life. Like,
calm down. Anyway,
we have to be the first to get the votes out. I
know it's just a bit of crack, but like, anyway, so but electoral systems, just to say, are serious because like it turns out that the election is pretty much your chance to say who's in charge for the next like 4 years in our case.
It's the most direct form of democracy that you can have, is casting a ballot.
So that was the number one, the Irish one, which is like very clever. Number 2 was have a list system, but where you can put like your vote against a candidate, and if enough people do that, it kind of shoots them to the top of the list. Right, so the candidates have a big incentive to kind of connect with the electorate. It gives them a say in who gets in. Right. So that's called a flexible list system. And the third recommendation was like, if none of those work, just expand the mixed member system that you already have. And from that very logical analysis, which I think is like David Farrell was on that report, who's like also Irish, so is obviously great. But like he's, these are like world leading scholars, right? It's not they haven't just written it on the back of a cigarette packet. After that, like when Labour and Plaid Cymru were kind of negotiating what was actually going to happen, somehow this previously rejected option was like vaulted to number 1. And the reason I don't like it is hopefully clear from what I've said. It's like you just literally like a gorilla put an X in a box, right? You can't express any preference on the list ordering. So that enables a sort of total party control of who gets in. So whoever makes up the list, and the making up of the list has been controversial in Welsh politics. The ordering on that list is the political lifeblood of the politician. So they have a huge incentive to kind of stay high on the list for the next time around. And they've not much incentive to ramble down to Swansea and hear like our complaints about rubbish collection or whatever, or whatever we want to talk to them about. And so the reason it was rejected is because it cuts off the direct linkage between the individual and a member of the Senate and the electorate. And yet we have it. And whenever I ask kind of politicians about it, both Labour politicians tend to say it was Plaid, sort of insisted on it in the negotiations, vice versa. And,
no one takes responsibility.
I don't know why we're doing this. And it's actually like, that's my sad sack. It drives me crazy. We got like, it's actually quite a lot of work to pick a new electoral system. You may as well, like, why would you reject all 3 of the expert advised ones?
The other dynamic that changes is there's a reason
That's
why it's
my
the
rant.
sad sack, right? This is your license this is your anger management.
Yeah, this is good. This is therapeutic.
This is so you go home and you're a good father. You know? The other principal change that it brings in is a geographical change, right? So we're now shifting to like, isn't it like 16 mega constituencies?
I think super constituencies.
I'm calling them mega constituencies.
Yeah.
That sounds cool. But like, what kind of change do you think that has, like in the mind of a voter? If I think that like my constituency is a fairly small one, so back where I'm from, it's not a particularly large one. Enough tactical voting in a first past post system will genuinely tip the scales. That is a much different reality to if my constituency then got merged with like 4 others, and then I'm thinking, how much of a personal connection is my representative going to have?
In an area you don't even know the name of it, you can't really describe its boundaries.
Yeah. Like, what do you think that does to a voter? Like, first of all, do you think the average voter actually gives a shit? Secondly, to the person who is maybe politically engaged, is then thinking, wow, the area that I'm being represented by is now huge. How are my constituencies or my old constituencies' concerns even going to be addressed if the person in charge of it is now representing, or people in charge of it are now representing an area double, triple the size?
Yeah, I think that's my concern. And at least with the flexible list system, if someone was really good at that, you could keep them in. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that is a concern that I have. To be honest, like, so when I lived in the Netherlands, they have a more or less similar system. Like, there was no local member of parliament office.
Yeah.
It wasn't a thing. You know, why would it be? Their job is to work in The Hague.
Yeah.
And once their party leadership is happy with them, and the party maintains its vote, that's their job.
Yeah.
So I think in the British context, and in the Welsh context, it's a shame, like, to kind of sever that connection to whatever extent you do.
Yeah.
I think on the plus side, I suppose, what this kind of larger constituencies does is it means that there's very little way to really vote tactically or strategically, or at least that kind of incentive is faced by fewer people. Because obviously in first past the post, it's like the name says, right?
Exactly.
So if you're, let's say, left wing in a certain constituency, you might kind of jump to Liberal Democrats because they're the ones who have a chance to actually beat the Conservative Party in that kind of alignment, right?
Yeah.
In the new electoral system, so once a party can attract something like 10 to 13%, depending on, the fragmentation of the other vote, and they're going to get a seat.
Sure.
So, provided you're thinking about voting for a party that has that level of support, you don't have as much tactical reason to kind of jump around. Like, even in the old system, like when I'd vote, I used to kind of split my vote, it's called. So I'd vote for different party
at regional and constituency
and regional, because I wanted those two votes to do two different things.
Yeah.
So it was like a tactical vote.
Yeah.
So it kind of, in that sense, it kind of dumbs down the voter's role. That's my feeling of it generally, is like, you don't have much scope for tactical voting.
No. But is that necessarily the worst thing? Dumbing down, maybe not the right.
No, well, tactical voting, it has different people have different interpretations of it, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah.
I think that in terms of like having that agency, I suppose that's what I'm saying. You lose a bit of that, but in terms of fearing your vote to be lost, that's not as much of an issue at all.
Exactly.
As I said, there are parties like the Greens, the Liberal Democrats here in Wales, where like they're going to struggle on that threshold, and whether they form together, policy of we'll campaign here, you campaign here.
Yeah.
But that kind of coordination hasn't really emerged on the left in the UK.
No.
And it would be weird if it emerged in a PR system where everyone feels like they're in with a crack.
Exactly. Yeah. Everyone thinks that they have a chance now. And I mean, I think that segues quite nicely into the new kids on the block who think that they have probably the best chance that they'll ever have in reform. How happy do you think that Reform is with this electoral system reform.
Yeah, very happy. I mean, it's perfect for them, right? Not that there's any kind of conspiracy that Reform actually set this up, right? Like this was
at all.
the Labour Party, the
predates
Welsh Labour Party and Plaid Cymru are responsible for this.
Yeah,
politically, right? To be clear, but it's perfectly suited to Reform. In the first place, because Reform is a kind of up and coming party.
Yeah,
like it's so popular that it literally might benefit more now from a first past the post system, ironically. But like what Reform kind of gains is that like the voice of the Conservative Party as like, well, we have to kind of cohere on the right.
Agreed.
Again, that doesn't sort of make sense now. So that kind of appeal of the Conservatives generally and the Welsh Conservatives is lost. But also as a party that is essentially a brand, that doesn't have that doesn't have a lot of Welsh voices kind of organically emerging into the, like, so you've seen Conservative Party politicians jumping ship to kind of, you know, get on the bandwagon.
I think we had a Scottish defect a week ago.
I don't know. I mean, but the nature that these things come together, because the nature of the system is like, I'm just voting for the brand of the party that I want. Labour, Plaid, Reform.
I don't care if there's a name there or not. I just want to tick the
There
Reform
are names
box.
there, but you can't affect it.
Yeah.
And I think that's I think with Reform literally trying to kind of build up and this, okay, now this is my opinion, to build out from like kind of an English nationalist movement.
Well, yeah.
To compete in a Welsh election, this electoral system couldn't be better.
Yeah.
So, you know, you get what you know, I have to say there's a certain schadenfreude, because I was very disappointed with this decision. But like, I do think like Plaid and Labour and the Welsh Conservatives, just by being kind of more ensconced rooted here in Wales, they're kind of losing this advantage that they might have had.
Yeah.
Because as I said, there's no way you can kind of say, well, I really like X, Y, or Z politician.
Yeah.
You just vote for the party.
Yeah. And like the chances of any subsequent reform electoral reform, I've got to be careful with my words here, is very, very slim. I mean, we were talking about devolution referendums in decades gone by, right? The time spans that we're talking here are decades. If somebody like Reform comes in, largely courtesy of this system, you know, you're not really going to be expecting any subsequent change, are you?
Reform is a somewhat ironically named political party,
especially as it's just the iteration of the same party, like 3 times over.
And I think I think they kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Generally speaking, like institutional reform is really hard to do.
Yeah.
And also like it takes away political energy from other stuff that you could be doing, right? So, you know, an old saw in like the academic game is whenever like there's a new vice chancellor, he or she immediately initiates like a reorganization of the university, which takes up the first like 3/4 of their tenure. And after which, like, you know, by the time everyone's figured out what their new role is, a new person comes in and
changes it all again.
And so, like, in some of the literature, they talk about like institutional navel gazing as quite problematic for politicians, right? And so the kind of act of focusing on the institution and making this change, it kind of comes, the opportunity doesn't come up all the time, like you said, or the necessity. And so, yeah, it's difficult to sort of see. This isn't a bad enough system that is going to malfunction. This is a functional electoral system.
Yeah.
It's just suboptimal. So I think we're going to have it for a while. Yeah.
Yes. And I think all of this culminates in some pretty exciting personal news that you have. Would you be wanting to share it today?
Oh, yeah.
It's
okay.
We've probably got maybe like 5 to 10 minutes to spend on this rather trivial piece of
personal
news.
I wasn't sure where you were going with that, whether you wanted to like...
You got some doctor's results that we need to talk about. You send them to me first. No, this will be great podcast material, I'm telling you. Make sure you have a close-up on his face when he opens the envelope.
Just like... So I'm the principal investigator of the Welsh Election Study.
Congratulations.
Funded by the Economic and Social Research Council.
Nice. I think you need to kind of put this in layman's terms for just how big a deal this is.
Yeah.
Don't be humble. This is the one chance I'm letting you actually brag about your achievements.
So, like, you know, it's like I think I need a kind of a Zlatan type persona. You know what I mean? Like
raging egomaniac.
Normal people deal in thousands, like God's deal in millions. Let's just put it
Matt
like that.
doesn't get out of bed for anything less than £1 million,
And even then, it's a struggle. Yeah, so it's a major. No, it is a major. Like to run the election, the national election study is a big project and a big honor.
What does that specifically mean? What are you going to be doing, without, of course, getting too much into the nitty gritty and the stuff you can't reveal? But when election day is coming up, what is Matt
So the
Wall gonna be
heart
doing?
of the thing is the heart of any election study is you create like you run a series of surveys. The surveys are like magic.
Yeah.
Because if you do them right, like you can actually know a lot about the population from a sample of a couple of thousand people.
Yeah.
So what our project will do is we'll be running a survey like before the election, during the campaign, and after the election. And basically that's essentially a resource for other academics and people who want to make kind of statistical sense of what's happening. So that all those 3 like representative data sets, and they're all kind of ready to go where you can start analyzing them. They're coded up and everything like that.
Nice.
So that's the kind of core, what we'd call like deliverable in the funding game. But as well as that, I think I'm really keen that the election study it creates like tools and materials and resources that really allow people from all walks of life to kind of make that jump from like, I don't know anything about politics, and especially people who don't know anything and feel like they can't vote because of that. So like as much as possible, like both in the survey I'm trying to measure, but in a lot of the kind of ancillary projects around that survey, we're trying to drive political engagement and ultimately political participation, which just comes down to like marking your X in your box.
Yeah.
And I think like Wales has had a sort of a tragically, or nearly like tragicomically, low level of political engagement, like to where honestly most people don't know who the First Minister is.
Yeah.
Or not most people, a lot of people would struggle to name the most senior politicians in their country, right?
I mean, you said it last episode of how no Senate election has reached 50% turnout,
and that translates into turnout, which for Louis and I, people who study like engagement, is like that's the kind of hard number.
Yeah.
And I sort of think that doing an election study like this, it's about helping a population understand itself to an extent, and that's kind of what elections elections can be very confronting, because say with Donald Trump or Reform, you might really find it difficult that one of your best friends or something has done this, right, has voted this way, and you might find it difficult to accept that you live in a country where a majority of people have voted this way, but you have learned something about the country.
You have,
like, and I think that's the kind of, what's the word? The rub of democracy is we all have to get along together, right? And elections, for all their flaws, it is like one person, one vote.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a good opportunity for society to make sense of what it is. And Wales, it's what's troubled me about living here is like there's kind of a sense of complete separation, nearly like dissociation from the country's own political system.
Yeah.
And anyone who, if you live here and you kind of, someone like myself or Louis, and people ask you what you do, and you say, obviously teach politics or research politics, the amount of times people will have an opinion about Boris Johnson or have an opinion about Donald Trump, and literally not have the first clue what's happening in their own parliament. It's very common. And so I think what I'd like the National Election Study and this podcast and Horse Race Politics is at least for the people in Wales, but also for everyone really, to understand Welsh politics. It's actually quite interesting. I told you about Ron Davies, right? There's other stuff like that. And I sort of think that that's hopefully good for our democracy.
Hopefully.
Is that sounds...
It's good for your bank account for a little
bit. It turns out I don't actually get any of the money myself. I wouldn't have applied for it if I'd realized that was the case.
The wallet of the ego has been filled up, no doubt. Now you get to walk around and be like, I'm head honcho number one when it comes to Welsh elections, at least for this electoral cycle.
But then, like, I think the real the real flex is to be like, the ego is just an illusion, right? So, that's the level I'm operating at. The election study won't
ascending out of the conversation.
We're not going to get too deep into like Jungian philosophy when we're doing our public engagement around Welsh elections. But if you want the real feed, Jung is the one. Ego, don't worry about the ego.
Don't worry about the ego.
Yeah. It'll take care of itself.
Yeah. But that's a very cool thing. And obviously, as we get kind of closer to the election, we'll be able to kind of get some more insights. Obviously, there's only so much you can share, but like it is still very cool. If you have any questions or anything for the number one election guy in Wales,
Mr.
and
Wales
Matt
election.
Wall, his co-host, then you can redirect them to the comment section down below.
And it's obviously it's a kind of passion of ours is following elections, but the reason I kind of do try and evangelize for it is because of its significance. It's like, I don't mind if someone doesn't follow the football, which is also a passion of mine.
Wow.
But it is actually bad for like me and for my family if another family doesn't know about what's happening.
Yeah.
Because ultimately we're interdependent. And there's other ways that society could be organized. And like, I kind of like the democratic way. So
it's not bad,
I think it's under threat. It's not as widely supported nor kind of growing as it used to be.
No.
So you would have seen like Putin and Xi Jinping, right, hanging out,
getting all buddy.
Well, there we are. That's the other way it could be. So I think we should fight for what we have. Definitely. Yeah.
If not, the Horse Race Politics podcast will be here, but we'll just change the colors to red, I think, and then we'll be nice patriots of the
hopefully we don't get targeted by the Russian.
No, if there's one thing we spout here, it's very pro-Russian propaganda. It's one message that's quite consistent about our podcast.
Just don't let any polonium into the coffee, I guess. Yeah.
Wow, that's the only way I can drink it, right? I think that's basically everything for today. I
think the wall of Great Craic and Sad Sack.
Matt's wall of Great Craic and Sad Sack. Get the name right. Like, it's your wall. You have to get this. Like, come on, man. We spent like hours going over messaging, and jeez.
This is the kind of innovation we do here at Horse Race Politics.
Maybe one week we'll have an actual whiteboard as well, some production rather than this like 90-degree angle on the sofa. And like barely legible handwriting.
Yes.
I think we have to work on that.
That's a feature of my handwriting rather than the wall. Anyway, so thanks very much, Louis.
Yeah, thank you very much, Louis. Thank you very much to me. That was this week's episode of the Horse Race Politics podcast. We will be back next week, hopefully, potentially with a guest. Who knows? We might just start yelling at people in Swansea City Centre and see if we can just get them on the pod. I think that'd be really good for political engagement.
Yeah. Engage the public, right?
Oh, yeah, exactly. If you had a survey of have you been on a podcast episode before, and then we yell at them to get them on the episode, and we go from 0 to 1.
That's an impact.
That is impact right there.
That is impact.
Thank you all for watching. Thank you to everyone who helped build this podcast. Who are we talking about? We've got ESRC, we've got Wizard, we've got Focus Games, we've got Swansea University, we have our amazing production crew. Thank you, Gary, in the corner. And I feel like we need like a separate camera angle in the corner so that we can just constantly have like a third voice on the podcast. Otherwise, we just get the little chuckles for the whole laugh. So I know if I'm saying something funny or
that's
not.
The goal.
That helps.
That's the goal, is to generate that chuckle. Anyway, okay. Well, thanks very much. See you next week.
Bye-bye.